I never thought I would be spying on my own family. At 65, after working 43 years as a high school English teacher in Rosewood, Connecticut, I expected peace. I expected gratitude. I expected to enjoy the home I had paid for, the garden I had cultivated, and the family I had raised. What I didn't expect was to be sitting in my bedroom on a Tuesday afternoon in October, watching my grandson Bradley conspiring with my daughter-in-law Melissa through the security camera I had installed just 3 days prior. After the signature, "Everything is ours," Bradley said, his voice crackling through my iPad's speaker. He was standing in my living room, the living room where I had taught him to read, where I had bandaged his skinned knees, where I had consoled him through his first heartbreak. Melissa's manicured hand patted his shoulder. "Mom won't know what hit her. The dementia diagnosis was the perfect opportunity. Dr. Friedman is already on board." I clutched the edge of my antique oak dresser, the one Frank and I had bought the year after we were married. My fingers traced the worn corner where decades of use had smoothed the wood. Frank would have known what to do. Frank would have confronted them immediately. His voice booming through the house we had bought when Samuel, our only child, was just 3 years old. But Frank wasn't here. Pancreatic cancer had taken him 5 years ago, leaving me alone in our 2-story colonial with the blue shutters and the sprawling hydrangea bushes that he had planted for our 30th anniversary. "Because they'll last longer than roses," he'd said, his eyes crinkling at the corners, the way they always did when he was particularly pleased with himself. I took a deep breath and rewound the footage. Maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe this wasn't what it seemed. The lawyer says as long as we have the medical evaluation showing cognitive decline, we can petition for guardianship. Then we can do whatever we want with the house, her savings, everything, Melissa continued. Her voice lowered but still perfectly audible thanks to the high-definition microphone I had specifically requested when the system was installed. "What about Uncle James?" Bradley asked. "Your great-uncle is 83 and lives in Arizona. He won't interfere. Besides, your father has already spoken with him about Mom's declining mental state. He's concerned, but trusts us to handle it." I felt a chill run through me, despite the warm autumn sun streaming through my bedroom window. James, Frank's brother, had always been kind to me. We exchanged Christmas cards and called each other on birthdays, but distance had made us more acquaintances than family over the years. Of course, he would believe Samuel if he called with concerns about my mental health. My mental health. I almost laughed. I completed the New York Times crossword puzzle daily. I ran the book club at the Rosewood Public Library. I volunteered 3 days a week teaching English as a second language to recent immigrants. Last month, I had helped my neighbor's daughter with her college application essays. There was nothing wrong with my mind. But apparently, my family was counting on convincing everyone otherwise. I switched off the iPad and sat on the edge of my bed, the handmade quilt from my mother soft beneath my fingers. The grandfather clock in the hallway, another piece Frank and I had saved for, chimed 3 times. Samuel would be home from his accounting firm soon. Melissa didn't work outside the home, despite their children being grown. Managing the household is a full-time job, she always said. Though what that entailed beyond shopping and attending charity luncheons, I was never quite sure. I had always tried to be a good mother-in-law. When Samuel brought Melissa home 27 years ago, I welcomed her with open arms. I never criticized her parenting of Bradley and his sister Emma. I kept my opinions to myself when they spent the money Frank and I had set aside for our grandchildren's education on a vacation home in the Hamptons instead. "The property is an investment for their future," Samuel had explained. I had nodded and smiled, though Frank had later paced the bedroom muttering about fiscal irresponsibility. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting slightly. Age was catching up with me in some ways, I had to admit, but my mind was sharp as ever. I walked to my closet and pulled out the floral hat box from the top shelf. Inside was a manila envelope containing my will, deed to the house, bank statements, and other important documents. Frank had always insisted we be organized about our affairs. No one should have to scavenge for paperwork while they're grieving, he'd say. I sat at my small writing desk and began to examine each document carefully. The house was worth approximately $875,000 now. Not a fortune by Connecticut standards, but substantial. My retirement accounts held just over $1.2 million, carefully saved and invested throughout decades of teaching. There was also Frank's life insurance policy, which had paid out $500,000 after his death. I had barely touched that money, keeping it in a separate high-yield savings account. It was a comfortable nest egg, one that allowed me to live without financial worry and still leave something substantial for my family. Family that was apparently unwilling to wait for me to die naturally before getting their hands on it. The front door opened and closed downstairs. Samuel's distinctive footsteps, slightly heavier on the right side due to an old college football injury, moved through the entryway and into the kitchen. "Mom?" he called up the stairs. "Are you home?" I quickly returned the documents to the hat box and slid it back onto my closet shelf. "I'll be right down," I called, my voice steadier than I felt. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face and looked at my reflection. Silver hair cut in a practical bob framed a face lined with 65 years of life. Laugh lines around my eyes from happy times with Frank, furrows in my brow from decades of grading papers late into the night. Soft creases around my mouth from years of smiling at new students each September. Behind my eyes, though, was something new, a cold, hard clarity. The kind that comes only when illusions are stripped away. I dried my face, applied a touch of lipstick, Revlon's Cherries in the Snow, the same shade I'd worn since college, and headed downstairs to face my son. Samuel was at the kitchen island, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I entered, his face arranged in what I now recognized as practiced concern. "Hey, Mom," he said, setting his phone down. "How are you feeling today?" Before this afternoon, I would have thought nothing of the question. Now, it felt like the first move in a chess game where I hadn't known we were playing. "I'm fine," I said, moving to the refrigerator to pour myself a glass of iced tea from the pitcher I had made that morning. "How was work?" Samuel loosened his tie, blue with small white dots, a Christmas gift from me 2 years ago. "The usual. The Henderson audit is giving us some trouble, but nothing we can't handle." I nodded, leaning against the counter. The kitchen had been remodeled 10 years ago, with Frank insisting on splurging for the granite countertops I had admired in a home magazine. "We're not taking it with us." "Eleanor," he had said, "might as well enjoy it while we're here." "I was thinking," Samuel said, his voice carefully casual, "maybe we should go see Dr. Friedman again this week. You seemed a little confused after your last bridge club meeting." My hand tightened around my glass. I had never mentioned any confusion after bridge club. In fact, last week I had won 3 out of 4 hands, much to the chagrin of Judith Abernathy, who had been the reigning bridge champion in our circle for nearly a decade. "Did I?" I asked, matching his casual tone. "I don't recall being confused. We played at Margaret's house on Thursday. Judith brought those terrible lemon squares that no one had the heart to tell her were overbaked. Helen talked about her new grandson for nearly an hour." Samuel's expression flickered for just a moment before he recovered. "Well, Melissa mentioned you called her that evening and couldn't remember how to get home from Margaret's. She had to stay on the phone with you to talk you through the directions." The lie was so blatant, it almost took my breath away. I had driven directly home from Margaret's house, a route I had taken hundreds of times over the past 20 years, and had not called Melissa or anyone else that evening. I had been home by 5:30 p.m., in time to watch Jeopardy and prepare a light dinner. "That's strange," I said, taking a sip of my tea to buy time. "I don't remember that at all." Samuel's face relaxed slightly. "See? That's what I'm worried about, Mom. These memory lapses seem to be happening more frequently. I set my glass down carefully, calculating my next move. I could confront him now, tell him I knew about his and Melissa's plan, show him the video evidence of their conspiracy. But what would that accomplish? If they were willing to fabricate stories about my mental state, they would simply deny the conversation caught on camera, perhaps claim I was paranoid or delusional. No, I needed time and help. You may be right, I said softly, allowing a slight tremor into my voice. I've noticed some difficulties lately. It's frightening. Samuel's eyes widened slightly with what looked like genuine concern, but I now saw something else there too. Opportunity. We're here for you, Mom, he said, reaching out to pat my hand. Dad would want us to make sure you're taken care of. The mention of Frank made anger flare hot in my chest. But I tamped it down. I know, dear, I'm lucky to have you. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Melissa and I were thinking, Samuel continued, emboldened by my apparent vulnerability. Maybe it would be good to simplify things for you. The house is so big for just one person, and the maintenance is manageable, I finished firmly. Frank and I chose this house to grow old in, Samuel. It's my home. A flash of frustration crossed his face before he masked it. Of course, Mom. I'm just thinking about what's best for you. We could look into some of those nice retirement communities. The one in Westport has a wonderful library and arts program, and would free up my house for him to sell. No doubt. Perhaps, I said noncommittally. But not yet, I think. I still enjoy my independence. Samuel nodded, though his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Whatever you're comfortable with, no rush. Except there was a rush, apparently. A rush to get me declared incompetent, to seize control of my assets, to push me aside like a used tissue. The front door opened again, and I heard Melissa's voice calling out. Hello? I'm home. She appeared in the kitchen doorway moments later, shopping bags from Nordstrom and Saks draped over her arms. Her blonde hair was freshly highlighted, her makeup flawless as always. At 53, she still maintained the figure of someone 20 years younger through rigorous Pilates sessions and what she called mindful eating. Eleanor, she exclaimed with practiced warmth, how are you today, sweetheart? Sweetheart. She had never called me that before Frank died. I'm well. Thank you, I replied, forcing a smile. Just discussing my doctor's appointment with Samuel. Melissa's eyes darted to her husband briefly. Oh, are you going back to see Dr. Friedman? Samuel thinks I should, I said, watching her carefully. I think it's a good idea, Melissa said, setting her bags on a chair. Better safe than sorry with these things. Early intervention is so important. The coordination of their lives was almost admirable. They must have been planning this for months, laying groundwork I hadn't noticed. I suppose so, I agreed mildly. I'll make an appointment tomorrow. I can do that for you, Melissa offered quickly. I have the office number right in my phone. Of course she did. Dr. Friedman was apparently on board already, according to the conversation I'd overheard. That would be helpful, thank you, I said. Samuel stood up. I'm going to change out of my work clothes. Will you be joining us for dinner tonight? Mom? The question was casual, but I now heard the surveillance in it. They wanted to keep me close, observe me, collect evidence of my supposed decline. Not tonight, I said. I promised to finish a novel for book club tomorrow. I'll make myself a sandwich later. After they left the kitchen, Samuel heading upstairs and Melissa beginning to unpack her shopping, I returned to my bedroom and closed the door. I needed to think, to plan. I sat at my writing desk again and took out a fresh sheet of stationery, cream-colored with a small embossed E at the top, a gift from my students upon my retirement. I began to make a list. First, I needed legal help, someone not connected to Samuel's firm or social circle. Second, I needed medical documentation of my cognitive health from a doctor I chose, not Dr. Friedman. Third, I needed allies, people who saw me regularly and could attest to my mental acuity. Fourth, I needed to secure my assets. And finally, I needed to understand why. Why would my son, who I had raised with love, who had seemed happy with his comfortable upper-middle-class life, be plotting with his wife and son to take everything from me under false pretenses? Was it simple greed? Had there been financial troubles I wasn't aware of? The Samuel I thought I knew wouldn't do this. The little boy who had cried when he accidentally stepped on a caterpillar. The teenager who had spent a summer building houses with Habitat for Humanity. The young man who had sat by his father's hospital bed night after night during Frank's final months. That Samuel couldn't be this person. But people change, or perhaps they reveal who they truly are when enough pressure is applied. I folded the list and tucked it into the pocket of my cardigan. Then I picked up my phone and dialed a number I rarely used. "Judith?" I said, when my bridge partner answered. "It's Eleanor. I need your help, and I need the name of that attorney your daughter works for." My life as I knew it had ended the moment I heard my grandson say those words on the security camera. But I wasn't finished fighting, not by a long shot. The next morning I woke before dawn. Sleep had been elusive, coming in fitful bursts, punctuated by long periods of staring at the ceiling, cataloging memories and reassessing them in light of what I now knew. Had Samuel always resented me? Had there been signs I'd missed? The way he'd insisted on taking control of Frank's funeral arrangements, citing my grief as the reason I shouldn't be burdened. The frequent questions about my finances disguised as concern. The subtle suggestions that the house was too much for me now. I slipped out of bed and dressed quietly in gray slacks and a blue cashmere sweater Frank had given me for our last Christmas together. The house was silent. Samuel and Melissa wouldn't be up for at least another hour. In the kitchen, I made a single cup of coffee in the Keurig machine my grandchildren had given me 2 Christmases ago. "So you don't have to make a whole pot for just yourself, Grandma," Emma had explained. I had thanked them sincerely. Though I missed the ritual of measuring coffee grounds and watching the pots slowly fill, the aroma gradually permeating the kitchen. I took my coffee to the small sunroom off the kitchen, Frank's favorite spot in the house. The eastern exposure meant it caught the first light of day, and he would often sit here with his own coffee, watching the neighborhood come to life. Now, I watched the sky lighten from indigo to pale lavender, then to the clear blue of an October morning. At precisely 7:15 a.m., I heard movement upstairs. Melissa was an early riser, usually up by 7:30 to complete her morning skincare routine and prepare Samuel's breakfast. I finished my coffee, rinsed the cup, and returned it to the cabinet. Then I took my purse and car keys from the hook by the back door and slipped out quietly. My 2018 Toyota Camry started with a reassuring purr. I had bought it new after Frank died, my first major purchase decision without him. Samuel had tried to steer me toward a more expensive luxury sedan. "Dad would want you to enjoy your retirement, Mom," but I had insisted on practicality. Now I was grateful for that choice. The Camry didn't draw attention as I backed out of the driveway and headed toward downtown Rosewood. My first stop was Rosewood Community Bank, where Frank and I had been customers for over 40 years. Marion Delacour, the branch manager, greeted me with a warm smile as I entered. At 68, Marion had been talking about retirement for at least a decade, but seemed unable to take the final step. "Eleanor, what brings you in so early?" "Everything all right?" I smiled tightly. "I need to speak with you privately, Marion. It's important." Her expression sobered immediately, and she led me to her office, a small glass-walled space with a view of the teller counters. After closing the door, she sat behind her desk, and leaned forward, concern evident in her eyes. "What can I do for you?" I took a deep breath. "I need to make some changes to my accounts, immediately." Over the next hour, I explained the situation in careful, measured terms. Marian's expression shifted from concern to shock to anger as I detailed what I had discovered. "I'm speechless, Eleanor," she said finally. "Are you certain?" "I heard them planning it with my own ears," I replied, my voice steady. "I have the video footage." Marian nodded grimly. "Well, we can certainly help protect your assets. First, we'll remove Samuel from your accounts. He's currently listed as a joint holder on your checking account." "Correct?" I nodded. We had added him after Frank died, a decision that now seemed naively trusting. "We'll open new accounts in your name only," Marian continued, "and I'd recommend moving a significant portion of your savings to a different bank entirely, just to be safe. I can provide a cashier's check today." "I'd appreciate that," I said. "I'd like to move $750,000. Marian blinked but nodded. "We can do that. Do you have another institution in mind?" "First Federal in Hartford," I replied. "I've already spoken with them by phone." Marian began typing on her computer. "We'll also need to change your online banking credentials. Security questions, everything. And I'd recommend setting up additional security measures. A verbal password, perhaps." By the time I left the bank 2 hours later, I had completely restructured my financial world. My accounts at Rosewood Community were reduced to containing just enough to cover regular bills and expenses for the next 6 months. The bulk of my money was now represented by a cashier's check in my purse, protected by a security feature requiring my driver's license and a password for redemption. My next stop was the office of Patricia Goldstein, the attorney Judith had recommended. Patricia's daughter played bridge with Judith on Thursdays. And according to Judith, Patricia specialized in elder law and had the tenacity of a bulldog in lipstick. Patricia's office was in a converted Victorian home on Maple Street, the heart of Rosewood's small professional district. The waiting room was comfortable but not ostentatious, with well-worn leather chairs and shelves of legal reference books. I had barely sat down when Patricia herself emerged from an inner office. In her mid-50s with salt and pepper hair, cut in a practical bob not unlike my own, she exuded competence and no-nonsense efficiency. "Mrs. Reynolds, I'm Patricia Goldstein. Judith called ahead. Please come in." Her office was as practical as she appeared. A large desk covered with neatly organized files, bookshelves filled with legal texts, and 2 client chairs positioned to catch the natural light from the windows. "Judith gave me a brief overview," Patricia said once we were seated, "but I'd like to hear everything from you directly." For the second time that morning, I recounted the discovery I had made. This time, including more details about Samuel, Melissa, and our family history. Patricia took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she set her pen down and looked at me directly. "Mrs. Reynolds, what you've described is attempted elder abuse and financial exploitation. It's not just morally reprehensible, it's illegal." "Please call me Eleanor," I said. "And yes, I understand that. What I need to know is how to protect myself legally." Patricia nodded. "First, we need to establish your cognitive competence beyond any doubt. I work with several independent neuropsychologists who can conduct a full evaluation. The documentation will be crucial. I've already scheduled an appointment with Dr. Lowell at Hartford Memorial for tomorrow," I said. Patricia looked impressed. "Good. Dr. Lowell is well respected. His evaluation will carry significant weight. Next, we need to revoke any powers of attorney or healthcare proxies that name Samuel or Melissa." "Done this morning at the bank," I said. "I've named my friend Margaret Hanson as my financial power of attorney and healthcare proxy temporarily, until we can put more permanent arrangements in place." "You've been busy," Patricia said, with the first hint of a smile. We'll need to update your will as well, I assume. I nodded firmly. Samuel will no longer be my executor or primary beneficiary. I have other plans for my estate now. We spent the next 2 hours drafting new legal documents, discussing strategies for documenting my daily activities to establish a record of my competence, and creating a plan for confronting Samuel and Melissa once all protections were in place. Don't tip your hand yet, Patricia advised as our meeting concluded. Continue as if nothing has changed. Let them believe their plan is working. It will give us time to build our case and secure your position. I left Patricia's office with a folder of documents to review and sign, and a follow-up appointment scheduled for the end of the week. My next stop was First Federal Bank in Hartford, where I deposited the cashier's check and opened new accounts. By the time I returned to Rosewood, it was nearly 3 p.m. I stopped at the public library, where I had volunteered teaching ESL classes since retiring. Rosa Mendez, the head librarian, waved me over to the reference desk. "Eleanor, you're early today. Class isn't until 4. "I know," I said, lowering my voice. "Rosa, I need a favor, a rather unusual one." Rosa had been my colleague when I taught at Rosewood High before she made the switch to library science. We had remained friends for over 30 years. "Anything," she said immediately. "I need documentation of my volunteer work here. Dates, times, responsibilities, and—" I hesitated. "If it's not too much trouble, statements from some of my students about my teaching." Rosa's eyebrows rose. "May I ask why?" I glanced around to ensure no one was within earshot. "Family issues. Questions about my cognitive ability. I need to establish a record." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "Say no more. I'll pull the volunteer logs from the past 2 years. We can have statements by next week. And Eleanor—" She reached out to grasp my hand. "Anyone who spends 5 minutes with you knows your mind is sharper than most people half your age." The warmth of her support nearly brought tears to my eyes. But I blinked them back. This was no time for emotional indulgence. "Thank you, Rosa. I appreciate it more than I can say." My final stop was the small tech shop on Main Street, where I had purchased and had installed the security system that had revealed my family's betrayal. The owner, Mike Chen, was barely 30, but had a genius for technology that made me feel simultaneously impressed and ancient. "Mrs. R, how's the system working out?" He greeted me enthusiastically. "Better than I expected," I said with grim irony. "I need to add a few more cameras, though, and I'd like to discuss options for backing up the footage to a secure cloud location. Something only I can access." Mike nodded eagerly. "No problem. We can add cameras to cover pretty much every angle of the house, inside and out. And for secure backup, I recommend our premium cloud service with 2-factor authentication. No one can access it without your password, plus a code sent to your phone." I ended up purchasing 3 additional indoor cameras and 2 outdoor ones, with installation scheduled for Thursday, when Samuel and Melissa would be attending a charity gala in Hartford. By the time I arrived home, it was nearly 5:30 p.m. I parked in the driveway, noting that both Samuel's BMW and Melissa's Range Rover were present. Taking a deep breath, I composed my features into an expression of mild fatigue and entered the house. "Mom?" Samuel called from the living room as I hung up my coat. "Where have you been all day? We were worried." I walked into the living room to find Samuel and Melissa sitting on the sofa, Bradley perched on the arm of an adjacent chair. All 3 faces turned to me with expressions of concern that I now recognized as artificial. "I had errands," I said simply. "The day got away from me." "You didn't answer your phone," Melissa said, her voice pitched higher than usual. "We called several times." I pulled my phone from my purse and examined it. "Oh, it's on silent. I must have forgotten to turn the ringer back on after my book club yesterday. I'm sorry to have worried you. Samuel stood up. Mom, this is exactly the kind of thing that concerns us. Forgetting to check your phone all day, disappearing without telling anyone where you're going. I allowed a flash of annoyance to show. I wasn't aware I needed to report my movements. Samuel, I'm 65, not 15. Of course you don't, Melissa interjected smoothly. We just care about your well-being. Bradley stood up, towering over me at 6'2". My grandson had his father's build, but his mother's calculating eyes. Grandma, we're just looking out for you. Dad and Mom have been really worried lately. The performance was almost convincing. If I hadn't heard them plotting, I might have believed their concern was genuine. I appreciate that, I said, softening my tone. But I'm fine, really. Just a busy day. Did you remember to eat? Samuel asked, his voice gentle but patronizing. You know how you get when your blood sugar drops. Another fabrication. I had never had issues with low blood sugar. I had lunch in Hartford, I replied. Hartford? Melissa's voice sharpened. What were you doing in Hartford? I realized my mistake immediately. I hadn't planned to reveal my whereabouts. Visiting an old colleague from teaching, I improvised. Margaret and I drove up together. She wanted to show me the new art exhibition at the Wadsworth Atheneum. Samuel and Melissa exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. That sounds lovely, Melissa said finally. Next time, just leave us a note, okay? Or send a text. I will, I promised. The lie smooth on my tongue. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm rather tired. I think I'll lie down before dinner. I'll call you when it's ready, Melissa said. I nodded and headed upstairs, feeling their eyes on my back as I climbed each step carefully, deliberately not using the railing. Once in my room, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. The iPad on my nightstand showed the security camera feed from the living room. I watched as Samuel, Melissa, and Bradley huddled together, speaking in low voices. I turned up the volume. Definitely hiding something, Melissa was saying. Hartford. She hasn't been to Hartford in years. She seems perfectly lucid today, Samuel said, frustration evident in his voice. Dr. Friedman said her condition would be variable, good days and bad. We need to move faster, Bradley insisted. Before she gets suspicious or someone else notices something. Samuel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father that it made my heart ache despite everything. The appointment with Dr. Friedman is Friday. We'll have him document significant cognitive decline. Then we meet with the lawyer next Monday to file for guardianship. And the house? Melissa asked, her voice eager. Once we have guardianship, we can make decisions about assets in her best interest, Samuel replied, making air quotes around the last phrase. Including selling the house for her care. What about Aunt Emma? Bradley asked. She calls Grandma every Sunday. Emma, my daughter-in-law's namesake and my granddaughter, currently in her second year at UCLA, studying marine biology. She had always been closer to me than to her parents, much to Melissa's poorly disguised annoyance. Your mother will handle Emma, Samuel assured Bradley. We'll explain that Grandma's condition has been deteriorating for some time, and we've been trying to manage it privately out of respect for her dignity. Emma will understand we're doing what's necessary. I switched off the iPad, unable to stomach anymore. Emma would believe them because she loved and trusted her parents, just as I had loved and trusted my son. The betrayal would devastate her, unless I stopped them first. I picked up my phone and dialed Patricia Goldstein's number. We need to accelerate our timeline, I said when she answered. They're moving faster than I anticipated. I was about to call you, Patricia replied. I've been making some inquiries. Your son's accounting firm, Reynolds & Partners, is under investigation by the SEC for financial irregularities. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. What? Are you certain? My contact at the SEC couldn't give specifics. But it's serious. The investigation has been ongoing for at least 6 months. If your son is involved, he would need money, I finished. A lot of money, quickly. Exactly. This isn't just opportunistic greed, Eleanor. This may be desperation. I thought of the vacation home in the Hamptons. Melissa's shopping bags from high-end stores, Bradley's new sports car, the lifestyle they had built that perhaps they couldn't actually afford. What does this mean for our strategy? I asked. It means we need to move immediately, Patricia said firmly. I'm filing for an emergency protective order first thing tomorrow morning. Pack a bag tonight and be prepared to leave the house for at least a few days. Do you have somewhere safe you can go? Yes, I said, thinking of my sister Evelyn's empty condo in Mystic. Evelyn spent winters in Florida, but had given me a key years ago. I can leave tonight if necessary. Do it, Patricia advised. Don't confront them yet. Just go. Say you're visiting a friend if they ask. Once the protective order is in place, we can proceed with the neuropsychological evaluation and build our case. After ending the call, I sat on my bed, trying to process this new information. Samuel's firm under SEC investigation. SEC. Financial desperation driving him to steal from his own mother. It was almost easier to accept than simple greed. But it didn't excuse the betrayal. I pulled a small suitcase from under my bed and began packing methodically. Clothes for several days, toiletries, medications, important documents. I added my iPad, chargers, and the small photo album I kept of Frank and me in happier times. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my jewelry box and took out the false bottom Frank had installed, revealing my emergency fund. $5,000 in cash, 2 gold coins Frank had inherited from his grandfather, and a small diamond tennis bracelet. I tucked these into a hidden compartment in my suitcase. A soft knock at my door startled me. "Mom, dinner's almost ready," Samuel called through the door. "I'll be down in a minute," I replied, quickly sliding the suitcase back under the bed. I checked my appearance in the mirror, smoothed my hair, and opened the door. Samuel was standing in the hallway, his expression concerned. "Are you feeling all right? You seem off today." I smiled tiredly. "Just fatigued from a busy day. The art museum was lovely but tiring." He nodded, seemingly satisfied with this explanation. "Well, Melissa made your favorite, pot roast with those little red potatoes you like." Another manipulation. Pot roast had been Frank's favorite, not mine. I preferred salmon or chicken. They couldn't even get that right. "How thoughtful," I said. "Let me just wash up." Dinner was an exercise in restraint. I ate small portions of the pot roast, complimented Melissa on the meal, and listened to Bradley talk about his job at the investment firm, where he'd been working since graduating from Dartmouth 2 years ago. I answered questions about my imaginary museum trip with vague but plausible details, and mentioned having a bit of a headache to explain my relative quietness. After helping clear the dishes, despite Melissa's protests that I should rest, I announced my intention to go to bed early. "By the way," I added as I was leaving the dining room, "Margaret invited me to spend a few days at her lake house in Mystic. I thought I might go tomorrow, get some fresh air." The look that passed between Samuel and Melissa was almost comical in its panic. "Mystic?" Samuel repeated. "That's nearly an hour's drive, Mom. Are you sure that's a good idea right now?" "Margaret will be with me," I said reassuringly. "And her house is lovely, all on one level, very easy to navigate. I haven't had a little vacation since before the pandemic. But your appointment with Dr. Friedman is Friday," Melissa pointed out, her voice strained. I feigned confusion. "Oh, I don't recall scheduling that." Samuel stepped in smoothly. "Remember, Mom? We discussed it yesterday, for your memory concerns." I allowed my expression to clear. "Oh, that's right. Well, I'll be back by Thursday evening. The appointment isn't until the afternoon, correct? Yes, but then it's settled, I said with finality. I'll leave after breakfast tomorrow. Now good night, everyone. In my room, I locked the door again and checked the security feed. As expected, Samuel, Melissa, and Bradley were in a heated discussion in the kitchen. We can't let her go to Mystic, Melissa was saying. What if she talks to this Margaret person about our concerns? What if she decides not to come back? She'll come back, Samuel said, though he sounded less than certain. All her things are here. Besides, it might be good to let her have this last little trip before everything changes. The cold calculation in his voice made me shiver. Can you just tell her no? Bradley asked. I mean, if she's supposedly having cognitive issues, can't you just, I don't know, take her car keys or something? Not yet, Samuel replied. We don't have the legal authority. After Friday's appointment and Monday's hearing, yes. But right now, legally, she's still a fully competent adult. This is ridiculous, Melissa hissed. She's ruining everything with this sudden independent streak. I switched off the iPad, unable to listen anymore. Then I retrieved my suitcase, added a few more items, and set it by the door. I would leave first thing in the morning before any of them could create obstacles. As I prepared for bed, I found myself looking at the photographs on my dresser. Frank and me on our wedding day, Samuel's high school graduation, Bradley and Emma as toddlers playing in the backyard sprinkler, the family Christmas photo from just 2 years ago, all of us smiling in matching sweaters, a happy family portrait that now seemed like a cruel illusion. I picked up the photo of Frank, tracing his face with my finger. I didn't see this coming, I whispered to him. I thought we raised him better than this. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I allowed myself to cry, silent tears for the son I thought I knew, for the family I believed I had, for the peaceful final chapter of life that had been stolen from me. But as I wiped away the tears, another emotion rose to replace the grief, determination. Frank wouldn't have wallowed in self-pity. He would have fought back, and so would I. I turned out the light and got into bed, setting my alarm for 5:30 a.m. Tomorrow would mark the first day of my new life, a life where I trusted no one completely, where I protected myself first, where I refused to be a victim. They thought I was a helpless old woman, easily manipulated and discarded. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I woke before my alarm, the gray light of dawn barely filtering through my curtains. After a quick shower, I dressed in comfortable clothes for traveling. Black pants, a turtleneck sweater, and a light jacket. I added my mother's pearl earrings, a small act of defiance. If I was leaving my home under duress, I would at least do so with dignity. The security footage showed no movement in the rest of the house. Samuel and Melissa's bedroom door remained closed. I made my bed meticulously, hospital corners just as my mother had taught me, and took one last look around the room that had been mine for over 30 years. I wheeled my suitcase quietly down the hallway and stairs, wincing at a creaky step near the bottom. In the kitchen, I wrote a brief note. Gone to Margaret's lake house for a few days. Back Thursday evening. Cell phone reception is spotty there, so don't worry if I don't answer right away. Love, Mom. The lie about cell reception would buy me time without their constant checking in. I placed the note prominently on the kitchen island, then slipped out the back door to the garage. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and wood smoke from a neighbor's fireplace. I loaded my suitcase into the trunk of my Toyota, backed carefully out of the driveway, and headed east toward Mystic, the rising sun at my back. An hour later, I was unlocking the door to Evelyn's condo, a modern 2-bedroom unit in a small development overlooking Mystic Harbor. The space felt unlived in, but not unwelcoming, with Evelyn's tasteful furnishings and large windows filling the rooms with light. I unpacked my essentials, made myself a cup of tea using the supplies I'd brought, and sat at the small dining table to make calls. First to Patricia Goldstein, confirming I had relocated safely. She promised to file for the emergency protective order that morning and would call with updates. Next to Dr. Lowell's office, confirming my neuropsychological evaluation for 10 a.m. the following day. Then to Margaret, my actual friend, not the fictional lake house owner, to explain the situation and ask if she would corroborate my story if Samuel or Melissa called her. "Those scheming vultures!" Margaret exclaimed when I finished explaining. "Of course I'll help, Eleanor. I'll say you're here but resting or in the shower or whatever excuse you need." "Thank you," I said, relieved. "I hate involving you in deception, but—" "Nonsense," she interrupted firmly. "This is self-defense. And frankly, I always thought Melissa had the moral compass of a weather vane. Never trusted that woman's smile. Too many teeth, not enough warmth." I laughed despite myself, the first genuine laugh I'd had in days. My final call was the hardest, to my granddaughter Emma in California. It was only 6:02 a.m. on the West Coast, but Emma was an early riser due to her research schedule at the university's marine lab. "Grandma," she answered, sounding surprised. "Is everything okay? You never call this early." "Everything's fine, sweetheart," I assured her, then hesitated. "Well, not entirely fine. I need to talk to you about something serious, and I need you to keep what I tell you confidential, even from your parents." There was a pause. "That sounds ominous. What's going on?" I took a deep breath and told her everything. The security camera footage, Samuel and Melissa's plan, the fraudulent dementia diagnosis, their intentions for my house and savings. I kept my voice steady and factual, presenting evidence rather than emotion. When I finished, the silence on the other end stretched so long I wondered if we'd been disconnected. "Emma?" "I'm here," she said, her voice tight. "I'm just processing." "Are you absolutely sure about this, Grandma? It's so hard to believe Dad would—" "I have video evidence, Emma, and audio. I heard them planning it with my own ears." Another long pause. "What can I do to help?" Relief washed over me. She believed me. "For now, just act normally if your parents call. Don't let them know we've spoken about this. I've engaged a lawyer and am getting a proper medical evaluation. Once those are in place, we'll decide next steps." "Should I come home?" Emma asked, concern evident in her voice. "No, sweetheart. Stay at school. Focus on your studies. I have help here, and I'm safe. Promise you'll keep me updated and call immediately if things escalate?" "I promise," I said softly. "I love you, Emma." "I love you too, Grandma. And for what it's worth, anyone who's had a 5-minute conversation with you knows there's nothing wrong with your mind." After ending the call, I felt simultaneously exhausted and energized. The weight of carrying this secret alone had been lifted, but the path ahead remained daunting. My phone buzzed with a text from Samuel. "Good morning, Mom. Just saw your note. Have a nice time at Margaret's. Call when you get there safely." I responded simply. "Arrived safely. Beautiful day here. Talk soon." Then I turned my phone to silent and set it aside. I needed to focus on preparing for tomorrow's evaluation without interruption. The rest of the day passed quietly. I reviewed my medical history documents, prepared a timeline of recent events to share with Dr. Lowell, and made a comprehensive list of my current medications and supplements. After a light dinner, I went to bed early, determined to be well rested for the evaluation. The next morning, I drove to Hartford Memorial Hospital with a mixture of determination and apprehension. Dr. Lowell's office was in the neurology wing, a modern space with calming blue walls and comfortable seating. Dr. Lowell himself was younger than I expected, perhaps in his early 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a reassuring manner. "Mrs. Reynolds," he greeted me, shaking my hand firmly. "Please come in. Your attorney briefed me on the general situation." but I'd like to hear it from you as well. I explained the circumstances again, careful to stick to facts rather than emotions. Dr. Lowell listened attentively, taking notes but maintaining eye contact. "What you're describing is unfortunately not uncommon," he said when I finished. "Elder exploitation often comes from family members, and fraudulent claims of cognitive decline are a frequent tactic. Rest assured, my evaluation will be thorough, objective, and well documented." The evaluation lasted nearly 3 hours, comprising multiple cognitive assessments, memory tests, problem-solving exercises, and a detailed review of my medical history. Throughout, Dr. Lowell maintained a professional demeanor, neither encouraging nor discouraging me, simply recording my performance objectively. "I'll have preliminary results by this afternoon," he said as the evaluation concluded. "The full report will take a few days to prepare, but I can provide an initial assessment for your attorney today, if that would be helpful." "It would," I confirmed. "We're filing for an emergency protective order, and your assessment could be crucial." He nodded. "I'll call Attorney Goldstein directly, and Mrs. Reynolds," he added, his professional demeanor softening slightly. "Based on what I've observed today, you have absolutely nothing to worry about regarding your cognitive function. Your performance across all metrics was excellent, well above average for your age group." The validation brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Thank you, Doctor. That means more than you know." When I returned to Evelyn's condo, I found 3 missed calls from Samuel and 2 from Melissa. I ignored them and called Patricia instead. "Perfect timing," she said when she answered. "I just heard from Dr. Lowell. His preliminary assessment states unequivocally that you show no signs of cognitive impairment. In fact, he says your cognitive function is in the top percentile for your age group." Relief washed over me. "And the protective order?" "Granted this morning," Patricia said, satisfaction evident in her voice. Judge Hernandez was particularly disturbed by the security footage. "The order prohibits Samuel, Melissa, or Bradley from accessing your financial accounts, attempting to obtain guardianship, or removing you from your home against your will." "So I can go home?" I asked, suddenly longing for my own space, my own things. "Legally, yes," Patricia replied. "But strategically, I'd recommend waiting until tomorrow. Give me time to have the order served officially. We've scheduled a hearing for Monday morning where you'll need to appear, but until then, the temporary order stands." I agreed to her recommendation and spent one more night at Evelyn's condo, responding to Samuel's increasingly concerned texts with brief, reassuring messages. "Having a lovely time. Reception spotty as expected. Don't worry about me." Thursday morning brought a call from Patricia. "The protective order has been served." Samuel was apparently quite shocked. He's already called my office twice, demanding an explanation. "What did you tell him?" I asked. "That all would be explained at Monday's hearing, and that attempting to contact you directly regarding this matter would violate the court order." She paused. "Are you ready to return home today?" "Yes," I said firmly. "It's time. I've arranged for a sheriff's deputy to meet you there at noon, just as a precaution." I packed my belongings and left Mystic by 10 a.m., arriving back in Rosewood shortly before noon. As promised, a sheriff's department vehicle was parked in front of my house, a female deputy standing beside it. "Mrs. Reynolds," she asked as I pulled into the driveway. "Deputy Garcia." "I'll be accompanying you inside." Both Samuel and Melissa's cars were in the driveway. I took a deep breath, grabbed my suitcase from the trunk, and approached my own front door with the deputy beside me. Samuel opened the door before I could use my key, his face a mask of confusion and anger. "Mom, what the hell is going on? We've been served with some kind of restraining order." "And who is this?" he demanded, gesturing to Deputy Garcia. "Deputy Garcia, Connecticut Sheriff's Department," she introduced herself professionally. "I'm here to ensure the protective order is respected during Mrs. or Reynolds return home. This is insane, Samuel sputtered. Mom, tell her this is a mistake. I met his gaze steadily. It's no mistake, Samuel. May I come into my home now? His face flushed, but he stepped aside. Melissa was standing in the foyer, her expression vacillating between outrage and calculation. Eleanor, she began in a placating tone. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. There's been no misunderstanding, I interrupted coldly. I know exactly what you were planning. All of you. I heard you discussing it on my security cameras. The color drained from Melissa's face. Samuel froze in the act of closing the door. Security cameras? He repeated weakly. Installed last week, I confirmed. High-definition video and audio. I have footage of Bradley saying, and I quote, "After the signature, everything is ours." I have footage of you discussing your plans to have me declared incompetent, to take guardianship, to sell my house. I have everything. Melissa recovered first. Eleanor, you're confused. We were only trying to help you. We've been so worried about your memory lapses. Memory lapses that don't exist, I cut in sharply. I had a complete neuropsychological evaluation yesterday with Dr. Lowell at Hartford Memorial. He found no evidence of cognitive impairment whatsoever. In fact, my cognitive function is exceptional for my age. You went to another doctor behind our backs? Samuel asked, incredulity mixing with the first hints of fear in his voice. Behind your backs? I repeated, anger finally breaking through my composed facade. The way you went behind my back to Dr. Friedman. The way you've been plotting to steal everything I own. Deputy Garcia cleared her throat. Mr. Reynolds, the protective order is quite clear. You are not to question your mother about her medical care or financial decisions. If you continue, I'll have to intervene. Samuel's jaw clenched. But he fell silent. I'll be upstairs unpacking, I said calmly. Deputy Garcia will remain until I'm settled. The hearing is Monday at 9 a.m. at the county courthouse. I suggest you find a good attorney. I climbed the stairs with as much dignity as I could muster, Deputy Garcia following a few steps behind. In my bedroom, I set down my suitcase and took a moment to compose myself. Are you all right, ma'am? The deputy asked quietly. I nodded. Yes, thank you for being here. I'll be downstairs if you need me, she said, and left me alone. I unpacked methodically, my hands working automatically while my mind raced. The confrontation had gone as well as could be expected, but the hardest part was still ahead. Living in this house with people I now knew would have destroyed me without hesitation. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Just checking in. Are you okay? I replied. I'm home. Deputy here for protection. Or, your parents know, I know. Hearing Monday. Her response came quickly. Booked a flight. Arriving tomorrow evening. Send address for lawyer's office. I hadn't asked her to come, but the knowledge that she would be here, that I wouldn't face Monday's hearing alone, brought fresh tears to my eyes. When I came downstairs an hour later, Samuel and Melissa were gone, the house eerily quiet. Deputy Garcia was sitting at the kitchen island drinking coffee. They left about 20 minutes ago, she informed me. Said they'd be staying at a hotel until the hearing. I documented it in my report. Relief washed over me. I wouldn't have to spend the weekend in their company after all. Do you feel safe remaining here alone? The deputy asked. I considered the question carefully. Yes, the security system is excellent, and I'll have the locks changed today. Deputy Garcia nodded, finished her coffee, and prepared to leave. Here's my card with my direct number. Don't hesitate to call if you feel threatened in any way. After she left, I walked through my empty house, truly alone for the first time in days. The silence was comforting rather than oppressive. In the living room, I noticed small changes. Melissa's decorative pillows missing from the sofa, the expensive scotch gone from the bar cart, Samuel's laptop no longer on the side table. They had taken some possessions, expecting not to return. I called a locksmith, who arrived within the hour to change all exterior locks. Then I called Mike Chen to check the security cameras and ensure they hadn't been tampered with. Everything's working perfectly, he confirmed after testing each camera. And the cloud backup is secure. No one accessed it except from your iPad. That evening, I heated soup for dinner and ate alone at the kitchen island, reviewing the documents Patricia had sent for Monday's hearing. My phone remained silent, no calls or texts from Samuel or Melissa. Their absence felt like both a victory and a wound. Later, sitting in Frank's favorite chair in the sunroom, watching darkness settle over the neighborhood, I allowed myself to contemplate the future. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but what came next? Could there ever be reconciliation with my son? Did I even want that after what he'd done? The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9 times, its familiar sound a reminder of constancy in a world that had shifted beneath my feet. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my terms, with my dignity intact. Emma arrived the following evening, dropping her suitcase in the foyer and wrapping me in a fierce hug. "I can't believe they would do this," she said, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "It's unforgivable." I stroked her hair, so like mine had been at her age, dark blonde and slightly wavy. "We'll get through it," I assured her. We spent the weekend preparing for the hearing. Emma reviewed the security footage, her face hardening as she listened to her parents and brother plotting against me. "Dad called me yesterday," she said as we prepared dinner Saturday evening. "Claimed you were having a mental health crisis, that you'd become paranoid and delusional. He asked me to testify about changes I'd noticed in your behavior during our calls." "And what did you say?" I asked. Though I already knew the answer, Emma's expression was fierce. I told him the only concerning behavior I'd noticed recently was his. Then I hung up. Monday morning arrived clear and cold. I dressed carefully in a navy blue dress and jacket, professional but not severe, with my mother's pearls and sensible pumps. Emma wore a crisp white blouse and gray slacks, looking older and more serious than her 20 years. Patricia met us at the courthouse, her briefcase bulging with documents. "Dr. Lowell's report came in over the weekend," she informed us. "It's even more definitive than his preliminary assessment. You scored in the 95th percentile across all cognitive measures." The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with dark wood paneling and uncomfortable benches. Samuel, Melissa, and their attorney, a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit, were already seated on one side. Bradley was notably absent. Samuel looked up as we entered, his eyes widening at the sight of Emma beside me. Melissa leaned over to whisper something to him, her expression darkening. Judge Hernandez, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, called the hearing to order promptly at 9 a.m. "This is a hearing on the matter of the emergency protective order issued for Eleanor Reynolds," she began. "I've reviewed the initial evidence and Dr. Lowell's neuropsychological evaluation. Mrs. Reynolds, your attorney has requested that the protective order be made permanent. Mr. Reynolds, your attorney has filed a motion to dismiss the order. We'll hear both sides." Patricia presented our case first, methodically laying out the evidence, the security camera footage, played in court, causing audible murmurs from those present. Dr. Lowell's comprehensive evaluation, statements from my volunteer students at the library, documentation from the bank of my financial competence, and my own testimony about the events that had transpired. Throughout, Samuel sat stone-faced, while Melissa alternated between defiant glares and attempts at looking concerned. Emma, sitting beside me, radiated quiet support. When it was the defense's turn, Samuel's attorney attempted to paint a picture of a loving family concerned about an elderly mother's declining health. My clients observed numerous instances of confusion, memory lapses, and uncharacteristic behavior, he argued smoothly. Their actions were motivated solely by concern for Mrs. Reynolds's well-being. The alleged plot was merely discussion of contingency plans should her condition deteriorate further. Judge Hernandez interrupted him. "Counselor, I've seen the video evidence. Your client specifically discussed falsifying medical evaluations and using guardianship to gain control of Mrs. Reynolds's assets. How do you explain that?" The attorney faltered momentarily. "Taken out of context, Your Honor, those conversations might seem problematic. But I'd like to hear from Mr. Reynolds directly," Judge Hernandez said, cutting him off. "Mr. Reynolds, please approach." Samuel walked to the witness stand, visibly uncomfortable. "Mr. Reynolds, is that your voice on the recording discussing having your mother declared incompetent in order to gain control of her house and savings?" the judge asked bluntly. Samuel glanced at his attorney, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Yes, Your Honor, but it's not what it sounds like. We were genuinely concerned about Mom's mental state. The conversation about assets was about ensuring they were properly managed for her care. And Dr. Friedman, the doctor you mentioned, was on board with your plan." "What exactly was he on board with?" Samuel swallowed hard. Dr. Friedman had expressed concerns about Mom's cognitive function based on what we reported to him. "Had Dr. Friedman diagnosed your mother with dementia or any other cognitive impairment?" "Not formally, no. Yet you discussed proceeding with guardianship based on his evaluation. Is that correct?" Samuel's composure cracked slightly. "We were exploring options, Your Honor." The questioning continued for nearly an hour, with Judge Hernandez methodically dismantling Samuel's claims of benevolent concern. By the time he returned to his seat, he looked defeated. After a brief recess, Judge Hernandez delivered her ruling. "Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, I am making the protective order permanent. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds and their son Bradley are prohibited from attempting to obtain guardianship over Eleanor Reynolds, accessing her financial accounts, or making medical decisions on her behalf. Additionally, they are ordered to return any property removed from Mrs. Reynolds's home, and to have no contact with her except through counsel for a period of 6 months, after which Mrs. Reynolds may choose to modify these terms if she wishes." She turned to me directly. "Mrs. Reynolds, the court finds you fully competent to manage your own affairs. The evidence suggests an attempted financial exploitation that has been rightfully prevented. Do you wish to pursue criminal charges?" The courtroom fell silent. I looked at Samuel. My only child, the boy I had raised, the man who had betrayed me. Despite everything, I couldn't bear to see him in prison. "No, Your Honor," I said quietly. "The protective order is sufficient." Judge Hernandez nodded. "Very well. This matter is concluded. Court is adjourned." As we stood to leave, Emma squeezed my hand. "Are you sure about not pressing charges, Grandma?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Some punishments are worse than prison." She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "He's lost his mother's trust, his daughter's respect, and quite possibly his professional reputation once the SEC investigation becomes public. That's punishment enough." Outside the courtroom, Samuel approached, stopping at a respectful distance when Patricia stepped protectively in front of me. "Mom," he began, his voice strained, "I know you won't believe this, but we really thought we were doing what was best." "Save it," Emma interrupted coldly. "We've all heard the recordings, Dad. You can't talk your way out of this." Samuel's eyes filled with tears. Whether genuine or calculated, I couldn't tell anymore. "Emma, please. You don't understand. The firm is in trouble. I made some bad investments, covered them up. The SEC is investigating. If they find what I did, I'll go to prison. I was desperate." "So you decided to steal from your mother?" Emma's voice was incredulous. "That was your solution." Samuel had no response. "Go home, Samuel," I said finally, "or to your hotel, or wherever you're staying now. The judge was clear, no contact except through attorneys." He looked as if he might say more, but Patricia stepped forward. "Mr. Reynolds, continuing this conversation violates the court order. I suggest you leave immediately." With a last despairing look at Emma and me, Samuel turned and walked away, shoulders slumped in defeat. That evening, Emma and I sat in the sunroom, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. We had ordered takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant and opened a bottle of wine Frank had been saving for a special occasion. "What happens now?" Emma asked, breaking a long, comfortable silence. I sipped my wine thoughtfully. "I'm not entirely sure. I'll need to update my will, obviously. And I'm thinking about selling the house." "Selling?" Emma looked surprised. "But you love this house." "I love this house because of the memories it held. Raising your father here with Frank. Holidays with family. Your visits during summer breaks. But now," I gestured vaguely, "it feels tainted somehow, and too big for just me. Where would you go?" I smiled. "I'm considering a condo in Mystic, actually, near the water. Evelyn's complex has a unit for sale that I quite liked." Emma nodded slowly. "I think that might be good. A fresh start. What about you? Will you still speak to your parents?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Not now, certainly. Maybe someday, when I can understand how they could do this. But I don't think things will ever be the same." "No," I agreed softly. "They won't." We sat together as darkness fell, the bond between us strengthened by shared betrayal and resilience. Whatever the future held, we would face it together, grandmother and granddaughter, survivors of a storm we hadn't seen coming, but had weathered nonetheless. 6 months later, I stood in my new condo in Mystic, unpacking the last of the boxes. The space was smaller than my old house, but bright and open, with large windows overlooking the harbor. I had kept only what truly mattered: Frank's favorite chair, our wedding album, my mother's china, a few carefully selected pieces of furniture and art that held special memories. The rest I had sold or donated, including the house. A young family had bought it, a couple with twin toddlers and a baby on the way. "Room to grow," the mother had said happily during their final walk through. I had smiled and wished them well, hoping they would create better memories within those walls than my family's final chapter there. Emma called weekly from California, where she was thriving in her marine biology program. She had limited contact with her parents, occasional stilted phone calls, a brief visit at Christmas that had ended in tears and recriminations. Samuel's firm had indeed been charged with financial fraud, though he had managed to avoid prison through a plea deal that included substantial fines and 5 years probation. He and Melissa had sold the Hamptons house and downsized considerably. As for Bradley, I heard through Emma that he had lost his position at the investment firm due to ethical concerns unrelated to my case. He was now working for a former college friend's startup, his golden future tarnished by his own choices. James, Frank's brother, had called after learning what happened, horrified and apologetic for believing Samuel's lies. We had reconnected more deeply, and he was planning a visit from Arizona in the spring. I set up the last of my photographs on the bookshelf, Frank and me on our wedding day, Emma in her cap and gown at high school graduation, my parents on their 50th anniversary. I had chosen not to display any pictures of Samuel or Melissa or Bradley. Perhaps someday, but not yet. The wound was still too fresh. My phone chimed with a text from Margaret. "Book club meeting still on for tomorrow. We're discussing The Year of Magical Thinking." I smiled and replied, "Wouldn't miss it. I'll bring the cookies." In the 6 months since the hearing, I had built a new life here, joining the local book club, volunteering at the Maritime Museum, taking a watercolor class at the community center. I had made new friends and strengthened relationships with old ones who had stood by me during the worst time of my life. As evening fell, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my small balcony, watching boats return to the harbor for the night. The betrayal still ached sometimes, a phantom pain like an amputated limb. But increasingly, there were days when I didn't think about it at all. I had learned that family isn't always defined by blood, that trust once broken may never fully heal, that even at 65 life can take unexpected turns. But I had also learned that I was stronger than I knew, that true friends reveal themselves in crisis, and that it's never too late to begin again. The security cameras that had revealed my family's betrayal had been a blessing in disguise, not because they had shown me what my family was plotting, but because they had shown me who I really was when faced with betrayal, resilient, resourceful, and unwilling to be a victim. As darkness settled over the harbor and lights began to twinkle across the water, I raised my glass in a silent toast to Frank, to Emma, to my new beginning, and to the woman I had become in the face of loss. Not a defeated victim, but a survivor, beginning the next chapter of her story on her own terms. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.